Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to a very special 100th episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. I'm thrilled to celebrate this major milestone with all of you, and we have a great podcast lined up for you today. Joining me for this special episode is the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Fox Roach Realtors, and the Trident Group. His name, of course, is Larry Flick. Larry will once again share his perspective on the current market, what's on the horizon for us in 2025, and how 2024 compared to what Larry predicted in our last episode together back at the beginning of the year. Larry will also share some personal insights on his time as CEO, some triumphs as well as some challenges that he's faced along the way, and what one characteristic he would like every Fox & Roach agent to have. We're going to call this episode Larry's Crystal Ball and Beyond. So let's dive right into the interview this week with Larry Flick, and we'll pick it up on the other side. Joining us for this landmark episode is none other than the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Fox & Roach, and the Trident Group. His name, of course, is Larry Flick. Larry, how are you today?
I'm great, Jason. Thanks so much for having me today. I am a big fan of your podcast and super psyched to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. Well, this is our 100th episode. This is
congratulations.
I can't believe that this crazy experiment has actually led us to 100 episodes. We got through it. It's been about 4 years now. It's kind of crazy to think that we've been on that long.
That's awesome. I mean, just congratulations. To be able to keep that going, coming up with fresh topics for every podcast is something you should certainly be proud of.
Well, thank you. And it's always great to see you. And I want to start out by, saying that when we have you on the podcast, you and I often talk about your role as CEO of Fox & Roach and the Trident Group in the context of what the state of the company is. We always call it Larry's Crystal Ball. And we talk about sales, we talk about market share, interest rates, company stats, which are all important, and agents want to hear about all that. And we're going to get into that. But I'd like to start off by asking you, what's it like for you personally being the CEO of the number one BHHS affiliate in the entire country? I don't know if agents I know our agents know we're up there, but right. We are consistently in the top, if not number one, every single year in terms of residential units, sales volume, and commercial sales now. And I'm not trying to brag on our behalf. That's not what we're here to do. But I would imagine it's like a double-edged sword for you. One being that you have this pride that you feel in accomplishing that kind of goal each year. And then the stress every year of trying to repeat that goal. So what's it like for you personally holding the mantle of being CEO of the number one BHHS affiliate?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'm proud to say that we've been number one in the Berkshire Hathaway network in volume, GCI, and units for 9 years in a row. And you hit the nail on the head. It is absolutely a double-edged sword. I mean, I sweat it out up into the convention every year. I remember one year, I think it was 3 years ago, and I knew that because I get to see, since BHHS California is owned by Home Services, I see their statistics. They send out the financials for every company every month. So and they're usually our main competitor. And we were super close at the end of this particular year. I think it was 3 years ago. And you just never, the stats were super close on the financials, but you never know what's in there, what's not in there. So the Sunday before the convention, which was on Monday, I went to pick up all my, my badges and so forth. And I heard them rehearsing in the big auditorium. So I poked my head in, and I happened to poke my head in right at the time they were rehearsing Berkshire Hathaway Fox & Roach number one in GCI. And so that was woo, But yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. The pressure is there every year. I want to be very clear. Being CEO of this company is truly an honor, and it's a privilege. It's I started at the company in January of 1993, And somewhere along the line, it did become my goal to be CEO. Wasn't in the beginning, probably halfway through my career. And it was very important to me, as most people that are listening, my dad was the CEO prior to me and was the owner of the company with some of his partners before we sold to Berkshire Hathaway. And it was very important to me as I advanced through my career that I wanted to become CEO because I wanted to carry on what my dad had created and take it to the next level. It was really important to follow in my dad's footsteps, so to speak. I'm very proud of our organization, of our company. My family has worked here for as long as I can remember, since I was a kid. But it was important when I did become CEO, I wanted to make sure that I carved my own path, which was difficult. Following in my dad's footsteps was challenging. He was, at the time, he was recognized as one of the great real estate minds in the country. And he's always been he's been a mentor to me. But to answer your question, yes, I feel the pressure every year. And, we're in October. It looks like we're in the lead for our 10th year in a row, but you never know.
It is crazy because going to the convention each year, I am not in your shoes, obviously, and I feel the stress of when it's being counted down. And those around us in the crowd feel the stress because we know we're going to be up there. It's just a question usually of where that's going to be. And like you said, California Properties is always up there. Right. It's the same kind of, handful of affiliates that typically are in the top 10. And I feel your stress, and I have that relief of knowing ahead of time that one convention that you were going to be. What was that in Louisville? Was that the year?
I think it might have been. It was either Nashville or Louisville. And it's funny, like, most people either love winning or they hate losing, right? Like, I enjoy winning, but I hate losing way more than I enjoy winning. So, and it's even worse because I get up there with all these other companies and they're already congratulating me. And it's like a total jinx move because, we still don't know at that point. When they bring us out there, we're in random order.
Well, I can totally relate to you because my wife will tell you I'm probably the most competitive person on the planet when I want to be. And I am just like you. I hate to lose every year with my goals. If I don't reach my goal, I am beside myself. So I'm sweating it out to the bitter end this year, and it's just been a ball of stress for me personally the past 3 months. But I'm going to get there. So all right. So I want to move on and ask you, if you had to pick just one thing about your job, what has been the most rewarding aspect for you?
So, my job is very interesting. It's not a taskmaster job, right? It's not a question of checking things off the box. The job involves, a lot of thinking, down the line. I don't see the results of decisions that I make today and for months and sometimes years. So, one of the nice things is when you make a decision, it works out. That's nice. But the best part of my job is that I'm in a position to help others grow. I love helping people achieve what they thought was otherwise unachievable. Helping them grow as a person, helping them grow their business. I have a lot of sayings, a lot of quotes, people that are close to me know that. But my favorite saying is to whom much is given, much is expected. It's actually a Bible verse. And I'm truly blessed. God gave me a good mind, a big heart, 2 wonderful daughters who I love very much, and a great job at a great company. So I know that I've been, given much. And so I know that it's my responsibility to give back and to help others. So when I'm able to help someone, grow as an individual, grow as a person, grow as a business person, help them achieve something that they didn't think they could achieve. That's it, man. That really makes me feel very, very good.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And with the good comes the bad, right? And you've been CEO for quite a while now, and so we've been through some stuff.
Yeah.
That's very flippant of me to say. So I want to ask you a unique question. What's been one of the most challenging moments in your leadership, and how did you navigate through that challenge?
Well, we've had a few. I became CEO just a little over 7 years ago, and it's been kind of a crazy run. So when you asked me this question, I thought about it, and going through COVID was definitely the biggest challenge that we had as an organization and that I had as a CEO. And the reason why, as compared to some of the other challenges we faced, is it was the great unknown. I mean, if you go back, right? So if you remember the Nashville convention was very interesting because that was right on the edge of when COVID hit, like mid-March of 2020. And I'll never forget this at the convention. So it's a Monday, Tuesday event. So you have Monday morning, Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday evening with the concert and everything. So Monday morning, everything was everything, on stage, shaking hands, hugging it out, all good. And then on Tuesday, it moved to fist bumps, right? There was no hugging, no shaking hands. It was fist bumps on stage. And then by Tuesday evening, just like 12 hours later, it moved to elbows on stage. It was incredible how things progressed. So we came home. The convention is an exhausting event for everybody, but we came home Wednesday and we met as an executive team Thursday morning. And, one of my sayings is, one of the things that I lead by is, if you get the process right, usually the result will follow, the correct result will follow. But I remember when I met with the team that morning, I said, look, this is one result that we have to get right. So we need to figure out what we're going to do to get this right. So at the time we had 800 employees. And if you remember back then, Jason, it was, okay, everyone go home for 2 weeks and then we'll be back in the office. Well, 2 weeks turned into 2 years practically. And I remember the first challenge was, only half of our employees had laptops. How can we get another 400 laptops? You can't. Everybody wanted laptops. So the first decision was made, like everybody just ripped their big, gigantic towers and PCs out of the wall, and we helped everybody put it in their trunk and go home. So by Friday, we had all 800 employees home. So, COVID was, when it comes to crisis management, there's going to be, if there hasn't already been, there's going to be books written about this. When everyone else was panicking, we as a leadership team were planning and pivoting. And I'm very proud of how we handled COVID because, again, there was no guidance. This was something that we had never seen before. There was no class at my business school that was, pandemic 101. So what I learned from that was that, when you run into a difficult situation, even a crisis, the following things are really important. One, you can't catastrophize, right? Don't go there. Don't panic. If you are panicking or you are worried or you're stressed, don't let others see it. And you have to take it one step at a time. It's very often that people want to skip to step 5, but you don't know what step 5 is going to look like till you complete steps 1 through 4. And finally, communication is critical. You have to over communicate in a crisis situation to the people that the crisis is impacting. I'll tell you a funny story and I was talking to my dad during the pandemic with what little time I had during the first 2 weeks. And he said to me, he's like, Larry, you're going to learn a lot from this and it's going to benefit you, long term. And at the time, like I wasn't getting any sleep. We were working 14, 15-hour days. And I was like, Dad, I don't really want to hear that right now, And he's like, no, it's going to pay off. And he was right because my learnings from COVID came in very, very handy with the fallout from the NAR settlement. And I was able to really lean on the things that we as a team and I as a leader learned from the pandemic. And we applied it with the NAR settlement, the fallout.
You touched upon a lot of things there, and it's like walking a tightrope without a net underneath, I'm sure, when it came to the pandemic response. And I think we all remember that time as just being crazy. I remember the day before we got locked down, I listed a new listing, did all this prep work like for months in
Yeah,
advance. And then one day on the market that we get shut down, and my sellers were furious. And I
right,
said, listen, I can't control that. It's a crisis,
yeah,
And so anyway, I just remember those days. And in particular, the Nashville convention that year, you had started this anecdote by saying about Nashville.
yeah,
I actually did not go to, I was on the fence because I had some health issues at that time.
right,
And my doctor said, I don't think it's a wise decision for you with everything that's happening to get on a plane, go to Nashville. We don't know what's happening out there. So I
right.
stayed behind. And I'm talking to my wife who went to Nashville, and it's the second day, I think. And we found out that like one of the first cases of COVID in Montgomery County was in my town. And so
Right.
everybody's panicking back home.
Right.
And I remember saying to my wife, I guess I should have went with you to Nashville. I mean, I don't know at that point, are we going to have, an outbreak in Skippack? I was living in Skippack at the time. So it was definitely a topsy-turvy moment, I think, for everybody, but especially for you as CEO, trying to handle that many employees and what to do next must have been pretty frightening, I would say.
Well, I tell you, it was what was very interesting was if you remember, there was everything was state by state. So what you could do in Pennsylvania, maybe you could do in New Jersey or Delaware. So we had to continue to look at all the rules and regulations for each state, which, by the way, were changing all the time. And if you remember the term essential services, so we had thousands of transactions that were pended that weren't closed yet. What were we going to do with those? And the saving grace was that when banking became an essential service, as I'm sure you're aware, because of our mortgage operation, all of our sales offices are licensed as banking operations, which allowed us to close all those transactions. Otherwise, we would have been closing on, people's, car hoods, driveway. It would have been a disaster. So we were able to do that. And I have to, it's still not too late to give kudos to Lisa DeWolf and her team. Lisa designed a way that we could close these transactions through Trident Land, and our settlement officers were on the front lines, they're closing transactions in the worst of times. So our sellers could sell their homes and our buyers could get into their new homes. That was a key part of the process, and Lisa and her team were awesome.
I remember settling in a parking lot one time next to a flagpole. It was
Right.
it was an old school that was converted into businesses, and I can't remember the title company. I think it was on Greenwood Road in Cheltenham, and it was just about the thunderstorm. And we're sitting in our cars, and this poor title person, is running from inside to outside to each car, and it is pouring. And I'm like, this poor lady is going to get struck by lightning because I am sitting right next to a flagpole. The wind is just kicking everything around. Branches are falling from trees.
Wow.
And this poor title person is trying to survive this closing. I mean, it was intense. It was crazy.
It was surreal. You remember, like, you saw someone driving down the road, like, what's he doing?
Yeah, what's that guy doing? Yeah, I think
crazy.
I will maintain the best part, and again, I'm not trying to be trivial about the pandemic, but the best part was driving to show houses when we were back in business. There's nobody on the road. It was it was the best, car situation, commute situation you could possibly have. But other than that, yeah, no thanks. I'm ready to move on. So, is there someone out there in the business world that you admire that speaks to you philosophically? Someone that you try to emulate in the way that you run Fox and Roach and the Trident Group?
I thought a lot about this question, Jason. And, as I mentioned earlier, I sort of carved my own path. I have my own leadership style. My style revolves around working together as a team. everyone working, no one person is more important than the team. One of my sayings is, it's always we, it's never me, right? It's always we, it's never me. When something goes awry, goes wrong, what are we going to do? I'm not a blame person. But with that being said, I definitely learned a ton from my dad, a lot from my dad. I mean, he started coaching me when I was just a kid practically. And, my dad and I have a lot of similarities, but we're also different in many ways. Some of the things that I learned from my dad in no particular order, I go back to, when I was a kid. I used to be, I played a lot of sports as a kid, and I ran pretty hot on the athletic field. And my dad would always say to me, maybe you should calm down a little bit, and he was right, but I didn't when I was a kid. But I have, over the years, I'm very calm now as I've matured. And that was from years of watching him. He was always very calm, cool, and collected. For me, it was sort of an evolution to get where I am right now. In the workplace, I'm very level. You just can't rattle me in the workplace. Some other things that I learned about him, compartmentalization. This is really important. There's a lot of things going on, but it's very, very important that when you're doing X, you have to be focused on X. You might come in from another problem, another crisis, but you can't let what's happening over here affect you when you're working over here. So compartmentalization has been something that he's taught me. That's very important. He also taught me just-in-time decision making. Never make a decision till you have to. A lot of times the decision will often just rise to the surface. It will appear over time. So, never prematurely make a decision. Never make a decision till you have to. You see, often people are rushing to choose, and a lot of times you don't have to. Like I said, the solution often rises to the surface. Another one is seek excellence and not perfection. If you are constantly looking for perfection, it's going to lead to frustration. It's going to lead to not getting things across the finish line in a very inefficient operation. It's funny, I'm an eternal optimist with especially at work. I'm big on positive reinforcement, building my team up, always optimistic. And it's funny, my dad, when he was CEO, he was always optimistic too, like always seeing the glass half full. But it's very interesting. After he retired, he's kind of changed a little bit, like Larry, I don't think interest rates are going to fall like you think they're going to. Or Larry, I think we're headed into a recession. Versus when it was CEO, it was completely the opposite. I haven't shared that with him yet. And I don't know if he knows how to listen to your podcast either, but it's been a very interesting transformation to see him do that. So, I don't try to emulate anyone as a leader, but I have learned a ton from my dad, and we've really just only scratched the surface on this podcast and the things I've learned from him.
Well, I'll tell you what, being a younger agent at the time, when your dad was still, running Fox and Roach, was every time he spoke, it was like listening to the smartest person in the room. I mean, he was such a visionary, and even as a younger agent, I'm like, I just want to hear. And your dad was always very soft spoken, and like you said, very calm. And he was such a leader. I always enjoyed listening to your dad. I greatly admired your dad through his tenure since I've been here. And so I'd like to say, if he can listen to this podcast, I'd like to thank him for his years of leadership. He's just an incredible man. I know him a little bit, obviously, not as much as some of the others that have been with the company for a long time, but just a great individual.
I'll make sure he listens to this podcast.
Well, thank you. So, all right. So I think we should get to a little brass tacks here. And
Gotcha.
so we always talk about on the crystal ball, where we are, where we're going. So I'm seeing more listings coming on the market where I am. I'm taking more and more listing appointments as we head into quarter number 4, which is great. I can feel that the dwindling interest rates have moved some people off the fence into the market, both buyers and sellers where I am. So you and I talked earlier this year when we were last together about the market heading into 2025. Since this episode is still titled Larry's Crystal Ball, are those good vibes I'm feeling going to carry us into a prosperous 2025 like you felt earlier this year, or has something changed?
No, I think that that's exactly what's going to happen. I think that interest rates are going to continue to drop into 2025. Now, we just got, we were really headed in a really good direction. I mean, as far as interest rates, right? So, inflation drives mortgage rates and unemployment drives inflation primarily. There's other factors, of course, but in my view, inflation is impacted by the unemployment rate, and interest rates are directly impacted by inflation. And for months, the unemployment rate was moving up and went from 3.5% to 4.3%, which is doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a 23% increase. So the higher the unemployment rate, the less people have jobs and the less money they have to spend, which typically will drive inflation down. And inflation has come down, from 9% in June of 2022 to in the 2.5% range, 2.5% to 3% range currently, depending on if you're looking at the CPI or the PCE index. So inflation has dropped dramatically. Now, interestingly enough, we got the jobs report last week for the month of September, and it showed a pickup in jobs created. And as a result, mortgage rates have ticked up a little bit. In my opinion, I think this is very temporary. I'm sure you saw in the news that there was a downward revision to jobs created this year of 800,000+. So it would not surprise me next month if this number gets revised down. So I think this is a little blip up, but I do think interest rates are going to continue to move down, from the mid sixes to the low sixes into the fives next year. And, interest rates are always super important as far as our industry, but they're more important now than ever before because of all the pent-up demand that exists, not just with buyers, but also with sellers. Let's look at the buyers, right? How many buyers wanted to buy in 2020 and 2021 only to miss out in multiple offer situations? And then what happened, right? Rates moved up very quickly, and not all of those buyers, but a lot of those buyers moved to the sidelines where they still remain. As rates decrease and continue to decrease, these buyers are going to re-engage. And as far as sellers, think about all of the owners that refinanced during the pandemic that have been desperately trying to hold on to that record low interest rate as long as they can. But life circumstances are happening right now that normally would have pushed them to move. But the financial circumstances of a low mortgage rate has superseded their desire to move. Their family is growing and their house is too small, or their family is shrinking and their house is too big. And normally this would cause them to put their home on the market and adjust their housing, but they're just so in love with that 3+% interest rate, they don't want to do it. Just in the past 2 years, our country has had 7 million newborn babies, 3 million marriages, 1.5 million divorces, 7 million people turned 65, 4 million deaths, 6 million new jobs, and 50 million job changes. These are all life circumstances that often come along with a move, but have not lately due to this lock-in effect. And this is changing right now. You mentioned it yourself. We're seeing inventory increase. When you look at inventory this year compared to last year, at this time, it's up 16%. It's a far cry from where we've been, but we are slowly working our way to a more balanced market. So I do expect 2025 to be the beginning of a 3 to 4 year bull market for the real estate industry. I expect unit sales to tick up in the 4 to 6% range over 2024. And I think at least for the first half of 2025, I think that average sale price in our marketplace will continue to rise a little bit because I think buyers are going to still outnumber sellers. and the lower interest rates will give these buyers a little bit increased buying power. But we're not going to see the increase to the level that we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think I can already feel that in the marketplace. I'm feeling. I think 2024 was unique in the way that there was more home inspections that I've seen this
Right.
than the previous 3 years combined, probably.
Yep.
There are signs out there, little breadcrumbs out there that kind of tell you where we're going. And just to your point, I feel exactly what you're saying, kind of in the marketplace right now, which is good. It all correlates. Now that we're many months removed from the beginning of the year when you and I spoke about the year ahead in 2024. Now that we have some solid data, did 2024 live up to your expectation, or were there some surprises along the way?
Yeah, I mean, the rates dipped down like I thought they would, but so that was correct, but I was a little late. I thought they were going to start dropping earlier in the year, but in the fourth quarter so inflation was dropping all through 2023, and then in the fourth quarter it started to tick back up last year, and that's what caused the delay in decreased rates. So we're seeing less unit sales than I expected, which is a direct result of the interest rates dropping later in the year than I expected. Now, Jason, if you remember, you asked me to make a prediction that you asked me to make like a wild card prediction, and I did predict that Home Services was going to settle the NAR settlement, the NAR lawsuit. And they did settle it a couple of months later. And I remember I told you I had no inside information on that.
Yep, you definitely got that one. 2024, I felt like was a good year, but a different year, like almost like a transitional year. And we talked about, the rates being what they were, and maybe it kind of drug itself out with the rates. We were all waiting for, some cut. But
That's a great way to put it. I think 2024 will be our transition year to a better market. And it's funny, there's all kinds of statistics out there about how real estate sales tick up after an election year as well.
Yeah, yes. And so I think there's so many factors at play. We had Dr. Lisa Sturdivant on from Bright.
She's great.
She was talking about the same things that you're talking about, that what is impacting the market, what is going to impact the market, and there's some wild cards right now. But I think overall, I feel like we're in a good place. I'm excited about 2025. I hope the agents out there are excited about next year. I think we're going to be good. So with technology changing, part of what we're dealing with is always these tech changes that are heading our way. It always happens every year. There's something new that comes out. So with tech changing the landscape of real estate, how is Fox and Roach staying ahead of the curve? What role do you see tech playing in the future of real estate?
There's always some new technology that pops up, and everyone wants to jump on board with it. And we pride ourselves on having what I feel is the best technology in the industry. With that being said, though, the real estate business is and always will be a relationship business. It's about our relationship. When I say our, I mean the leadership team, our relationship with our sales associates, and the relationship that our sales associates have with their customers. But to answer your question more directly, I believe that the company, I believe that we can leverage AI better than anyone in the industry. I think the company that is able to leverage AI as an organization is going to be way ahead of everybody else. And I think we're going to be that company. We have the best, in my opinion, we have the best AI expert in the real estate industry in Rajiv Sajja. He was on board with AI right out of the gate, and he is on the cutting edge. He is constantly sending me new things that we can do with AI, and it's changing so fast. I'm big about being as efficient as I can as an executive. And I know that AI can help me become more efficient. And I know that AI can help our organization become more efficient. We've done a really good job so far of educating our sales associates on how they can use AI in their daily business activities. Rajiv has done 42 podcasts. He has 16,000 subscribers now. He's launched 50 videos on his YouTube channel. He has a weekly AI newsletter that has 1,900 subscribers with a 50% open rate. So I think we're ahead of everybody else as far as educating our sales associates on how you can use AI. I actually think that you sent him something on how you used AI to gain a listing, which it was incredible. So now, but the next step for us as an organization is how we can use AI as a company to become more efficient, so that we can become more efficient in what we're doing here, so that we can use the time that we save to improve our support to our sales associates. It's about taking tasks off the plate of our leadership team through AI so that our leadership team can provide our sales associates more support. So that, in my opinion, is the next step. I am in constant communications and conversations with Rajiv and the executive team about that. We have a retreat coming up. This is going to be a big topic about that. But that is what I feel is the next step, utilizing AI to be more efficient as an organization so that we can use that time that we save to improve our support to our sales associates even better now, tomorrow than it is today.
I'd like to give a special shout out to Rajiv because I think as agents we are spoiled, to have Rajiv on our side because wherever our footprint is, like I feel like Rajiv is always there, right? You turn around, yeah. Rajiv's there, and Rajiv is always coming up with something new and cool for us to use to help our business. And I got to tell you, you had mentioned. I reached out to Rajiv because I did use his custom GPT for listing presentations. And I've now gone on, I think, 3 more since I actually reached out to Rajiv. And in each case, I am using his custom GPTs to bring, number one, MLS descriptions and the different tones that you can have with your MLS descriptions with me, as well as a 30-day marketing plan that just blows people out of the water. I mean, if you're against competition, I almost can guarantee that nobody else is doing what I'm doing in terms of my listing presentation, and that's because of what Rajiv is doing. So I want to make sure to thank him and tell him I appreciate it because I don't know where he finds the time to do his AI research all the time. I mean, it's like you said, it changes literally day to day, hour to hour. I don't know how he keeps up with it. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I'll tell you, I said to Rajiv the other day, I said, so what are you up to this weekend? He's like, oh, and it was all like AI this, I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing this newsletter. He's just all in on it. And like I said, I think he's the best in the country, best in our industry. And we as an organization need to leverage that. And that's going to be a big move for us in 2025. And I'm very excited about it.
Well, my next goal is to beat Rajiv at pickleball. So the invitation just went out for the tournaments. Rajiv, I just want to let you know I'm coming for you, and you're going down. I
just hope everybody comes back safe from that pickleball tournament.
Not like the softball tournaments of.
Oh my gosh, the softball tournament.
Speaking of another stressful, thing for the company to go through.
We had so many injuries at that softball tournament.
We got through the softball tournament without anybody dying. That was for the company. So, okay. So what's one piece of advice that you have received that has stuck with you throughout your career?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I tried to take this from your chat.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Piece of advice. From a business perspective, I would say, you always need to think long term. Where do you want to be long term, and then you adjust short term to get there. When you have a decision, you have to focus on the long term implications of that decision and not the short term implications of a decision. I think from a business perspective, that's some of the best advice I've received as far as from a leadership perspective.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I feel like from a realtor perspective, I think that makes sense. I mean, what what we do, I always used to tell agents, like what we do today is going to affect our business downstream, like 3 months from now, 4 months from now.
Yeah.
So
Yes, exactly.
the marketing, the feelers, the follow up, all that client relation stuff may not directly impact you today, but it's 3 months from now, 4 months from now, when that person is ready to buy or sell. That's what we need to be thinking long term all the time for our business.
Yes.
And marketing wise, where do we want to go? And so I'm going to flip the script a little bit with this next question. I want to know from your perspective, what's one value or principle that you hope every Fox and Roach agent embodies? What characteristic would you like us all to have?
It's funny. I often hear our sales associates talk about, when they have a listing and an offer comes in, and they're so relieved that the buyer's agent is from our company, because they know that the transaction is going to go well, or the anxiousness they have when an offer comes in from one of our competitors, and maybe they're not trained or as professional as our sales associates, and they kind of brace themselves for potentially a rocky transaction. So I would say professionalism. We've always prided ourselves on being the most professional outfit, in the industry. We are, the number one company in the network, 9 years running. We're the number one company in our marketplace for as long as I can remember. And that's important, obviously, but doing business the right way is more important. So when we talk about professionalism, we're talking about knowledge, making sure like our sales associates have the knowledge they need. That's what all this training around the NAR settlement was about. We went, the leadership team started working on preparing for this, the fallout from the NAR settlement. It was about 9 months ago, and we met with the team a lot. And I know they thought I was crazy because I required a lot of time together. And I'm not big on meetings, because I don't like having meetings just to have meetings. But I thought it was very important that by the time, August 17th came around, we as a leadership team needed to become, way before that, we needed to be the experts in the industry so that we could help make our sales professionals the experts on the rules post August 17th. Everybody knew how to operate pre-NAR settlement, but I wanted to make sure, and we wanted to make sure as a team, that our sales professionals knew how to operate in the post-NAR settlement world better than anyone else. So knowledge, professionalism includes, customer service, make sure we treat our customers right, timely in accurate responses, and at the end of the day, guiding our buyers and sellers to the best course of action for them. Because, we'll close 25,000 transactions this year, 25,000 real estate transactions. That's a lot, but we can never forget what we're doing. We're helping families buy and sell homes, for their family. So these our clients go through this maybe, 2-3 times in their lifetime. And when they go through it now, it's totally different than what they went through 5 to 10 years ago. So just treating our customers with the care that they deserve. I know our sales associates do that, and I take great pride in the professionalism that our sales associates have.
Well, I was part of a panel. I think Brad Pat was
Yes.
hosting it, and it came. I think the question was, what does the brand do for you? And to me, I have to live my value system, right? And I feel like with Fox and Roach, it aligns with my values, and part of my values is being, as you said, professional. It speaks to integrity. It speaks to professionalism. I take the branding very seriously, and I feel like we do that as a company. And I know when I'm working with another agent on the other side that's from Fox and Roach that it's often everything it should be in terms of a transaction, in terms of professionalism, in terms of knowing your timeline, your agreements. You spoke to all those things. It's about us having the education that we've been given in order to get through the transaction as well as we can. Sometimes things happen, but I mean, you have a leg up when you're working with another Fox and Roach agent, and that's what I appreciate about this company. And so I just want to make sure that I mention that. Okay. Before we get out of here, last question to you. This episode is a milestone for everything real estate. And so since this is our 100th episode, and hopefully I can say that the quality of these episodes have gotten better over time, I certainly hope so. Is there something that you're deeply passionate about that you're focused on improving and growing in? It could be anything, business, personal. I know you're a golfer. I know that you're passionate about golfing. So is there something out there that really moves you? This has become a passion of mine. What's a passion of yours?
Well, golf is a passion of mine. You're right. I treat it like, I take it very seriously. I practice, I want to play well. But another passion, and this, we're getting a little deep here, and this is so another passion of mine is, over the last few years, I've discovered Christianity, and it's made a big impact on my life. I go to church most Sundays now. I never did before. And where I go, there's a pastor. He's really good. He makes a lot of sense, and it really settles me down, sets me up for the week. Just good messages. It's just a lot about treating others well. You never know what's going on in someone else's life. So just kind of take that into consideration. I was actually baptized a couple years ago, which was a pretty cool experience. So it's been a big thing for me. Regardless of your faith. Whatever your faith is, I now have faith that I didn't have before, and it's had a big impact on my life, and I think it's made me a better person. And so it goes back to helping others and trying to help others grow, and it's grounded me and settled me down a little bit, and it's really been a new and important part of my life.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing that. That is definitely something I did not know. Not that I'm going to ask you about probably politics or religion. Those are probably two things I would not touch upon with anybody. But I do appreciate you sharing that and being so forthcoming because, we're always talking about the company and statistics. And I wanted to get a little personal with you on this episode. This is a special episode. I want to go beyond what we normally talk about. And I appreciate you sharing that with the audience. I know, sometimes it's not easy to let your guard down a little bit. And I appreciate you doing that. So Larry, this was a pleasure for me. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Thank you so much for giving me a platform. I do want to thank you for allowing me to do this and make a knucklehead out of myself, more often than not on this podcast through the years. And, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing for this company, and looking forward to many, many more years together.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Jason. Like I said, I'm a fan of you and your podcast. You do a great job, and thank you for everything that you do.
That was the conversation with Larry Flick. We thank Larry for his time, and I really appreciate him joining us today. Instead of me doing my typical takeaways from this episode, what I'd rather do is take the time to thank all of you. We started this podcast in the middle of a pandemic in 2020 with absolutely no knowledge about recording, editing, sound, or the whole interview process in general. From what mics to use, best practices to employ, to what a hosting site is and which one to use, we truly knew nothing about podcasting. And I say all this not to brag, because in many ways, we still know nothing about podcasting, but we seem to have built a loyal audience over our 4 years of doing this podcast. And I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you along the way, which has resulted in new friendships that I never would have had if not for this podcast bringing us together. So I want to thank all of you who listen, and I hope that you will continue to enjoy our podcast for many episodes to come. Thanks again for your support. Now let's go sell some houses. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me at jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the podcast yet or left us a review, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.